So today I wanted to talk about diversity in its very many forms. But I'll go through and introduce myself a little bit first, if you don't mind. So we'll just stick on the slides for a few minutes. So I wanted to say who I was to give you an idea of my background. So I'm a lecturer, and yay to that. Think of somebody excited and looking forward, like this Lego character, but you're probably thinking of something more disheveled and disheartened and down, spiky hair, a bit more like Einstein. I also am a researcher, usually find tech in my hand wherever I'm going, my main focus being on DevOps. I love the merge of software with hardware because I'm very much a fan of the fact that it's not one thing. There are many components to everything that we do, no matter what that item is. So, really, that stemmed from my original work being a systems architect, rather like Emmett. It's kind of a case of, well, we're pulling all of these pieces together. The pieces on their own may not look like a lot, but when they come together, that one piece, that one thing that you thought was insignificant is actually really quite important. In order to make the changes that I had talked about, I also do a little bit of writing. Now, the writing may come from maybe a blog article, maybe a journal paper, or whatever it is. It doesn't really matter. It could even come from standards. So I'm involved in writing the DevOps standard with a team at the minute, and it's been fantastic. In the fact that people are coming from everywhere and they've different perspectives helps. It causes some frustration, of course, but it helps too. Another thing that I am is a woman. And you'll notice that in this particular Lego character, which obviously I've modified, I'm showing myself as perhaps I want you to see me. I am a woman, and that's about the height of it. There isn't much to it. Okay, so maybe some of you are expecting something a little bit more like Wonder Woman, which I'm most certainly not. And maybe sometimes I feel a little bit more like the Granny Lego character, but in everything else, in all of the other characters that I've shown you, when I talked about being a lecturer, a researcher, a software architect, Lego presents these people as being men. And often, if I were to give you a written description of who I am, if you didn't hear my voice or see my image here, you'd probably assume the same. You probably assume that I am, in fact, a man. So, to my mind, the fact that I'm a woman is, in some ways, well, certainly as far as my job is concerned, it's incidental. But unfortunately, in order to be heard, in teams, in the work environment, I have to do more. I have to work harder. And that's why I specifically worked towards becoming the chair of the ACMW Europe. Or not so much being the chair, but to be involved with ACMW Europe to try and see what can be done. How can we work together to make that change? So many of these things are probably going against me in this case. And I know that many of you are looking at this and thinking, wait, she's using Lego characters. Couldn't she at least use an avatar? Well, I hate to tell you, but all of the very best graphic designers that I know are preparing for a conference. So no, they're there. They're at SIGC. They're not available to help me. So Lego characters is unfortunately the best that I can do. So you may cringe a little occasionally on my slides, but stick with it. There's something there for you. So I've said I'm a lecturer, I'm a researcher, software architect, I'm an author, I'm a woman, and I'm chair of the ACMW Europe. Oh, and I'm Irish. That's possibly a big sell against me rather than for me. Okay, so I'm going to talk about what we mean by diversity. And when I say what we mean by the diversity, I'm going to actually say what I think about when I think about diversity, because we all think about different things. Why do we care about diversity? Why is it important? What kind of borders are there? And how does this limit us? How does this limit potential in general? And of course, we try to end with a discussion on what we can do. I'd love to say I have the answers for you, but I don't. 20 years I'm here, and that's never mind being a student and finding the struggle. I still don't have the answers. And I think that on the day I die, no matter what age that comes at, I still think I won't have the answers. I just hope that maybe in my lifetime, we can take a step closer to finding out how we can possibly change the situation for the good. Okay, so diversity to me, the first things I think about when we talk about diversity are backgrounds. where we're coming from. And the backgrounds can mean a lot of things. It includes our religion, our race, our age. I'm not young. I'm not very old, but I'm getting there. Something I'm not unhappy about. Our neuroability. What do we do? How do we think? Do we think differently? And our gender. And I put gender at the bottom of this list because it's not the only thing that we should think about when we think about diversity. Diversity is something that I'm working hard for personal reasons, and I'll get into a little bit of that. But it's not the only thing. It's not the defining meaning of what diversity is. There is more than just gender to it. So, what's the problem here? The problem is, and these are just light examples specifically chosen for graphics design, although we could talk specifically about we could talk about more generic computing rather than specifically graphics. There are a number of studies out there, and I have to say I didn't find enough about gender diversity in the general area of graphics. Yes, in computing, but not so much in graphics. But in graphic design, and I was shocked with this one, in graphic design, 86% of designers are Caucasian. I was completely unaware of this. I'm absolutely dumbfounded by it. I have read a lot about it since I found that, and I found a little bit maybe about some of the potential reasons why, but I certainly haven't figured out the full answer. And that definitely needs investigation. I know there have been some great talks yesterday. I sat in on a few of them, listening to how this is a problem and why it's a problem. I wish I could have stayed for the whole thing, but unfortunately, it ran through the middle of the night for me. 82.6% of web designers are male. Now, this did not shock me, not at all. I knew this one because I've seen the results of the website. I understand how they're built differently. And there was a lovely quote that I found where an award-winning female game designer, Brenda Braithwaite, she confessed that there was a time when, within this decade, I knew every single female game designer out there. She knew them personally. There were that few that she could name them all. And that's a bad situation. And okay, you can say that maybe that situation has changed, but has it really changed that much? I don't think so. As a matter of fact, I would strongly say it hasn't. I look at the games that my children play, and my children are no longer young, or at least not too young. And I can say that they take a very dim view of women, or there's very few characters which are strong female roles. And when they do, there's a very set female role that is. It's not that there's a range of personas available for women. You're either exceedingly meek and need saving, or you're the kind of person who's so much that you can do it all yourself. There's nothing in between. There's no range. And when we looked at some of the issues with regard to 82.6% of web designers being male, those same people were asked, do you think there's any sort of issue with regard to bias, say gender bias, for example? And 66.5% of them said, no, there's definitely not an issue with gender bias in this region. So if they can't see the issue, it's not going to be fixed. So we have to be a little bit more vocal about it. Now, there's the right way and the wrong way, maybe, to be vocal, or at least there are ways where you're more likely to be heard versus a little bit less likely to be heard. Okay, so I wanted to specifically talk about how this impacts on us as we work in teams. So we know we need to diversify in how we make up our teams with regard to graphics teams. But let's just step back a wee second and think about, how do we measure our diversity? How do we think about our diversity when we talk about our teams? And there's a lovely, I suppose, definition of how we might measure our graphics, how we might measure our ability, our diversity inside in our graphics. And the items are craftsmanship, inspiration, color, design, genius, composition, originality, mystery, and authenticity. And I think they're a lovely set of ideals. Kudos for anybody who can tell me where I got that quote from. Any ideas? I hope you're all furiously typing away. Well, the answer should be Salvador Dali. And he was the one who came up with the idea that he had the 50 secrets of magic craftsmanship. And his idea was to say that, well, let's look at art and how do we How do we measure art? How do we say if it's good art or bad art? And if we take a couple of examples that we have, I have two examples on my screen. I hope everybody can see them clearly enough. And in these ones, we have Vermeer and we have Mondrian. Again, apologies for the poor pronunciation of these names. They're not my particular I'm not very good at pronouncing names. Sorry, I picked a Dali. That was right. I picked an abstract Dali and I picked the Mondrian. I actually really liked the Mondrian as a kid. I still like it for its clarity. It means something specific to me, much more so than the abstracts of the Dali, although they are both abstract. Does that mean because I prefer the Mondrian that Dali is no good, or because Dali has this particular style that the Mondrian is no good? It doesn't. I think that they each have elements that are important. I think that by looking at these, we're each looking at ideas in a different way. And how do we present these ideas in a different way? They are quite different type of abstract paintings, and yet they convey their own message. So we're looking at our diversity in our teams, and we're looking at the fact that this is a very creative area. It's maybe not quite like your traditional computing. Each of the members of the team who create this wonderful piece of work, whether it's a video or a website or a graphic, an image, or whatever it might be, each of us takes a different perspective. And when we pull these perspectives together and start to talk about them, we might see that there's actually more to it. Or maybe we need to clarify because maybe our message isn't coming across quite the way we had expected it to. The experience of our individual stakeholders, our team members, is also going to change how we carry out our design process and what kind of knowledge we have about conveying our message to people, depending on who that person is. So we might know that talking in a certain way will mean that, yes, I know I'll get that message to that person. For example, I know that as an older person, that, yeah, I'm not the best person to try and convey the message to somebody who is a tween, between a 12 and an 18. I don't speak their language. I don't know the text acronyms. I don't know how to use Instagram. I'm not a fan. I don't like tweeting. Never have. Not going to start. So I'm the wrong person to try and create something for that age, for that generation of people. So I know if I want to get a message across to them, if I want to encourage them to do something or to think differently, I know I have to get the person onto my team who understands it a little bit better, who can talk in the right language. Okay, so who might be in our team? Our team might include the product team who, if you like, do the nitty gritty, the actual development of that product. There may be a project manager or a product manager, depending on what way your teams are formed. Obviously, the client, because the more input we get from the client, the more we work with them. And in this particular example, I'm thinking of a website. The more we work with them, the more feedback we get, then we're going to find out, yeah, we can get exactly what they want. The graphic designer, the visionary who's behind this whole site, the testers, the end users, and on and on and on. So the team may vary from company to company, but we need to think about things like client satisfaction, maybe something outside of my realm, more social engagement, likes and shares. Maybe we need to think if this website is targeting a younger generation, that's who we need to think about. We need to think about the designer and team members' response time. Maybe that's a measure that we want to put in to say, are we being diverse enough? Do we have people who work fast, work slow? Really think about what they're doing. So, what are the skills that we should look at? We should look at people diversifying our team with skills in communications. We need people who are creative. We need people who are just curious, people who have a constant desire to learn. And from my understanding of art, which I must admit is limited, you need to have a strong ability to take criticism because just because I like something doesn't mean the next person will like it. So we need a range of people with different skills. And they aren't going to look different, they're going to sound different, they're going to act different. So that brings us to a number of borders that we need to cross. Because the teams we're working at, they might span different countries. There are large cultural differences in how we work, how our minds work. And I know there are a number of companies who are actively engaged with ensuring we've got gender diversity, perhaps some nationality diversity. But are they really thinking about rural versus suburban, city diversity, country diversity? Are they getting really into it? And then how many are working towards ensuring diversity of mindsets? Now, with your diversity of mindsets, let's think about the different types of mindsets that are generally classified here. And again, you can take this or leave this. You can decide what way you want to frame the mindsets as, but we have to agree that there is a difference in people's mindsets. So you may be an abstract thinker, you may be more analytical, creative, concrete, critical, convergent, or divergent. You may be a mix of the above. You don't have to be one set thing. And one of the ones that I wanted to bring in along with gender diversity is autism, because autistic people make up superb user experience designers because they study human behavior as a science. They obsess perfectly over things as they go along. They try to understand how the interactions are going to take place. But let's flip this on its head. We are now spending so much time using the devices, using technology, that we are become addicted due to the overuse. In fact, we're creating symptoms of ADHD and similar amongst ourselves by using these devices. So now we need to think about how do we design our sites or graphics to be a little less complicated so that we step away when needed, so that we don't engender this idea of ADHD like symptoms on ourselves. So we're limiting ourselves at the minute. ACMW Europe focus specifically on encouraging and promoting young women in computing and even older women in computing to try and encourage them to realize their potential, to stay in the job if they're happy in the job, or to work towards promotion if they so choose. So if we look at a study that we have, 160 female and male students altogether, females indicated by 84% that they prefer sites that were less cluttered. And they suggested using pull down menus was much easier than using other techniques to navigate to a site. Whilst men said, okay, we want to use graphics as much as possible to click on. Who are we targeting here on our websites, men or women? Having a woman involved in the design, having them in the team, encouraging diversity. And I'm not saying all women, I'm saying a good balance between men and women on the team. Then what you end up with is a more inclusive process overall. That's what we want to work towards. So what can we do about this? Well, we want to encourage companies to set up a committee within their organization to specifically start to look at what it is they have in place. Maybe they are diverse. Maybe it was by accident. Maybe they were the kind of company who actually focused on the skills. Maybe not. Maybe you're beginning to realize now that you're not the company who focuses on the skills and that maybe you have missed out some key things. Okay, so let's review what you have done and what you haven't done. It's only by understanding your environment that you can make the changes. Okay, now you understand your environment. The next thing you do is try and find a way to actively recruit in those areas which there is a little bit less representation. It could be that you have a lack of racial diversity. Maybe you have less women on your team, or maybe you're an all women team and you need to get more men involved. Maybe we need to look at how we do that advertisement. If you put up an advertisement which says must have 5 years experience, if a woman has 4.5 years experience, they will tend not to apply for it because it said must have 5 years experience. If a man looks at that job ad and they've got 3 years experience, they're more likely to say, I'll apply. If they take me for interview, then that means they want me anyway. If they don't, they don't. Women don't tend to do that. So we need to be aware of what general personality traits that a lot of us have, and try and work to make ourselves more open and inclusive in the job advertisements and interview process. So consider the phrasing of our job ads. Set up support teams so that we can ensure that we've got a flexible structure to support our team members. Do you know of somebody in your company or in your team who is the sole carer of an elderly relative, or has young children and is the sole parent, or in some way has some significant social responsibilities? Now, we don't want those social responsibilities impinging on work. On the other hand, we are humans. They are. Our emotion is going to happen at some point. It's going to come out. So why not ask, what's up? What do you need? School doesn't start till 20 past 9. I need to get the kids off to the bus. I can't make that 9 a.m. meeting. If you could make that 9 a.m. meeting move to 10 past, quarter past, 20 past 9, I can make it every day. Moving that meeting by 5 minutes could take all of the pressure off of that person. Ask. It's a simple thing to do. Encourage your team members to support each other. Send an email just saying, hey, well done on that. I like that job you did. That was mentioned in the presentations yesterday. I thought it was lovely. Sometimes you don't get the likes that you might hope to get for whatever piece of work it was. But by having an informal chat session on Slack, or having an hour of more relaxed discussion, as you would do normally in the coffee break in the office, sometimes you can get that affirmation that you need. Or you might find that somebody needs something that you can help them out with, but they were afraid to ask. Account for neurodiverse candidates. Think about all of us and how we have different abilities. The correct term is to say that we're differently abled. So, does it mean that if you have ADHD, if you have dyslexia or dyspraxia, if in some way you have a different ability, if you're not the same, what's the same? I showed you my Lego bricks for a reason, because they're not the same. I couldn't find one that matched what I want to be or how I want to represent myself. So think about how we can encourage people to go for interviews so that we can take them into our teams. Sometimes people don't like being in front of a camera or standing in front of 10 or 20 people. Maybe an interview, which is a 4 panel versus one person on their own, maybe that's somewhat intimidating. Maybe offer them the choice and say, would you prefer a one-to-one interview? Would you prefer a video interview? What works? Think about the questions you're asking and how they can be confusing sometimes. If you're asking a question that doesn't have a solid answer, sometimes for neurodiversity, that is too hard. The abstract thinking might be difficult. They may have to set out a formula in their own head to figure out what's the path I need to go. That may take a little extra time. Allow for that. What we really most of all need to do is to design human resource systems, our policies, our procedures, to make sure that we account for these differences. And this is not a one-off thing. This is something we have to continuously review and see, okay, did it work? Are we making an improvement? Is it a small improvement? Is it continuous progress? Great. Okay, it doesn't have to be huge, but are we making progress? If we're not, if it suddenly starts to downshift, which is often the case, you make a big burst. Black Lives Matter? Great. Finally, there's a movement that is causing change. Wonderful. Bad reason for it to happen, but I'm glad that suddenly there is a movement. Next year, will that movement still be going with the same rate? Probably not. Will companies still listen as well? Probably not. So we need to make sure that whatever policies are in place for gender diversity, for geographical diversity, for neurodiversity, for race, for religion, it doesn't matter, for whatever it is, that those are sustaining. Before I leave you today, I want you to really think about this. I want you to think that no two people are the same. Think about who you are. And I don't just mean who you are on the outside. If you were to represent yourself as a Lego character or a sprite or whatever it might be, what might you draw? What might it look like? Don't just think about your looks, because my looks certainly don't show who I am, partly, but not all of it. How do you represent yourself as how you are on the inside, or what it is you do, or what your feelings are? You are more than just the sum of your parts. If you look at the general Lego figure, which I'm showing you now, you can't tell what gender it is. You can't tell the race. You can't tell the religion. You can't tell what they do for a living. You can tell nothing. It is simply a person. How do you define yourself? How do you see other people? Maybe what they're projecting isn't all that they are. Maybe you need to think about your team and encourage them to speak. That's really my message for today. Think about what you are, how you can help, what small change can you make for today. So, if there are any questions, please feel free to ask.
Hi, Ruth. I guess I'm jumping in for Tony.
That's okay.
Okay, cool. So nice to see you again. I had the pleasure to meet you last year in the ACM Women in Italy, and it was a wonderful talk. So thank you very
Thank you.
much for these very inspiring tips and things that we should be doing. Um, okay, so I will start with a question that I asked when I heard you talking about criticism.
Mhm.
And the question is, how do you train the people in the teams to deal with criticism? And basically, how do you make them, or how do you help them to be more resilient when resilience can
Mm.
be different from culture to culture?
Oh, very, very much. I think that it's important to work to begin to teach people how to give the criticism before you work on how you take criticism. Because I think we often give an offhand comment. And again, I think this was also mentioned yesterday in one of the talks. The talks yesterday were great, which was that you can write something in Slack or whatever your tool is, and you mean it one way, but then somebody reads and they go, "Oh, that's actually not what I meant. It that sounds really bad. Is that what they meant? Did they mean to give out to me, or is it just oh, by the way, don't forget to fix this," or nice and gentle? So I think we need to be aware of what we're writing. I'm very fond of writing emails and not actually hitting send till the next day, because it makes me go back and read the email and say, yeah, was there something there? Now I still miss things and I still go, oh my God, did I really say that? That's not how I meant it to mean, especially when people reply. And you just have to say, sorry, I'm sorry, that's not what I meant. Thank you for the correction. Accept the fact that you did wrong. Giving criticism or giving critical advice can be hard. And you have to accept that when people give critical advice, they're trying to help you. They're not actually trying to be bad. Most people who give you that kind of advice are saying, you know what, I actually care enough to speak. If I didn't care enough to speak, then it's probably because you're useless. So take the fact that I'm speaking as being a good starting point. Try and ignore my tone, because maybe my tone isn't just 100% correct, or maybe you're misinterpreting my tone, but it's the advice you need to read into.
Excellent. Good. So I think that's very, very important to understand also that the other person is not just is not negative. The fact that they care,
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
big positive.
Yeah.
Thank you. The second question is from Tony, and he's asking, oftentimes diversity and inclusion takes a US centric view. How is it viewed in Europe?
Yeah. I think we look to the US a lot to see what is happening. And I'm going to give Ireland as my example because I said I am Irish. There is quite a bit on gender diversity. But recently in my own college, I said, "Oh, okay, it's Black Lives Matter. We should do something. We have a number of students, and I know the terms. I'm going to get it wrong, and I apologize in advance if the correct term is black. I think it still is. Um, we should try and interview them and have a photo up on the board that's a rotating photo coming up saying, I'm this student, and you know what? Look to me. I'm a good example. I can do it. I am good. I am top of my stream." And the answer was no, 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 no. That's too dangerous. We might accidentally offend.
Mm.
So inclusion and diversity, is seen, I suppose, in a very narrow scope in Ireland. I don't think we push it far enough. And one of my, you notice I talked about neurodiversity there. I talked about autism because it will be quite close to my heart. And I don't hear anybody talking about it in Ireland, which is really rather sad. I think we need to really think about this a bit more. Now,
Mhm.
ACMW Europe, we have purposely put together a section on the website and in our newsletters called Diversity Heroes. And the idea is to highlight people of different race, religion, culture, age, all types of diversity to say, hey, this is what I do. This is my research area. I'm not talking about the fact I'm a woman. I just happen to be a woman. I'm not talking about the fact I'm black. I just happen to be black. I'm not talking about the fact that I happen to be chic. I am chic. It's there. It's part of me. It's who I am, and move on. So we've got this series running, and we're actually inviting people. If you have something you would like to highlight, if you would like to help us with our series, we would love people to get involved.
Excellent. And they have your contact, so they should just reach out to you or to ACM
Absolutely.
Women Europe, right?
Yes.
Excellent. Um, so there's another question. How will you get companies? So this is from Tony again. How will you get companies to work, collaborate with ACM women?
We work all the time with companies to try and encourage them to get involved, to invite them either to be sponsors of our Women Courage event, which, as you say, you had been to before. So that's to encourage and promote women in computing, but even just to attend, to start to realize what's going on and what kind of levels of skill set there are out there that you're missing because you're not phrasing your work in the right way. You're not phrasing your advertisements. And we've all seen it that this is a problem, especially where you see, oh, you need 20 years of experience with Kubernetes, but Kubernetes is obviously not that. Oh, again, I'm going to look at that and go, yeah, right, and just apply. But we tend to be a bit more direct and say, no, if they wrote that, that's what they meant. We don't generally accept that. Well, it's kind of a bit of a give and a take. So we try to work with companies by encouraging them to come, and we offer sessions like diversity training to them.
Okay, excellent. And how these companies can reach out to you also through the ACM Women website?
Yes. Yes, exactly. Through the ACMW Europe website and the emails, all there.
Okay, excellent. That's great to know because I think it goes a bit hand in hand with the previous question about diversity in Europe. That is
Yeah.
usually not a topic that is heard as much as in the US, for example.
Yeah. I think a lot of the papers focus very much heavily on America, which they shouldn't. The issues are still there. We just don't have, I think maybe particularly again, for where I am from, the border with the UK is only 20 minutes down the road. And you're talking about from one field to the next field. We don't see the border. We don't ask your religion. I don't care with which religion you're from. You just happen to be Tony from up the road. That's it. That's all I care about. So we don't see it as much as maybe it might be prevalent in other countries like the US, I think.
Mhm. Okay. Yeah, it's we need to work on that. So
Yeah, we do.
I'm talking because I live in Germany, so I see that that is also something that we should discuss more and bring
Yes.
more to the highlight. So there's another question from Alex Bryant.
Mhm.
He is asking, does ACMW have certification courses for individuals and companies to encourage and practice inclusion initiatives?
That is a fantastic idea. Please get in touch with me by email and I will set that up.
So
I
Alex,
will definitely set that up. I no, I don't believe that we have. We don't in ACMW Europe. I don't believe we have in the ACMW, but I would absolutely set that up in a heartbeat. Get back on to me by email, and I will do that. I will enact that definitely.
so I guess Alex is already writing the email right now. Good. So I think we have 2 more minutes. Is that right? There's one last question that I asked, and because this is very close to me at the moment, and you talked about recruiting.
Yes.
And so oftentimes you see that people give priorities to the skills of the person.
Yes.
And sometimes you have a candidate that is not so skilled, but he's motivated and wants to
Yes.
learn and brings diversity. to the company. So, what should we give, or to what we should give priority?
Again, I'm going to take it back to the original advertisements. Um, by the time we get to interview stage, it's too late. We've already lost the good candidates that may add a little bit of diversity if we don't have the advertisements right. In an example, I had a company who had asked me to write a course for them. And we had this guy apply, and he said, okay, you're here for DevOps and you're a psychology student. Why are you applying for this? And he said, well, because I'm interested to learn and I will do it. You tell me what I need to learn and I'll learn. And he brought a notebook with him and a pencil. And every key term that he didn't know, he wrote down. And he said, by the time I come back next weekend, if you offer me a job, if you offer me a placement on a course so that I can get the job, I will do it. If you tell me I have to do a particular course, I will do it. Tell me what I need to do, and I will be there. And I convinced the company to take him on because he showed that initiative. It was all about the willingness. So none, and I mean none of the skills that were required. He was the right candidate for the job. By the time he'd finished his training, partly in the company and partly with us, he was their top employee.
Okay.
Absolutely top. So we need to focus on, in our phrasing of our requirements, we need to make sure and focus on something that's wrongly termed the soft skills. I disagree. They can be very hard, those soft skills. As per the question earlier, when you said, how do we deal with criticism? That is not a soft skill. Communicating with others is not a soft skill. So if we can get people on our team who have that ability, great. It doesn't have to be everybody, but it should be someone on our team. So get the ads right to start, then we can work on the next piece.
Excellent, excellent advice. So, Ruth, thank you very much. This has been a beautiful opening to our day 2 of the Diversity and Inclusion Summit. Thank you for being with us here, for sharing all these insights. And yeah, in the name of the whole Diversity and Inclusion Committee, thank you very much.